The look in my daughter-in-law Amanda's eyes was pure venom as she stood in the marble kitchen of her mansion. I had never seen such contempt. Not even when I accidentally broke her Italian vase. Not even when my grandchildren preferred my cookies. But this time was different. Her perfectly manicured finger pointed at the door. "Get out of my house, I dare you. You would never survive a week without us." Her words cut through me like ice. I stood there, 67 years old, with nowhere to go. But something inside me snapped. While they were out that afternoon, I packed my suitcase, left a note on the table, and walked out the door. The weight of my wedding ring still felt heavy on my finger, even though Richard had been gone for 2 years now. 45 years of marriage ended with pancreatic cancer that took him in just 6 months. Our modest savings had mostly gone to medical bills despite the insurance. That was when Jason, our only son, insisted I sell our home and move in with him and Amanda. "Mom, it makes no sense for you to be alone in that big house," Jason had said. "We have plenty of room. The kids would love having Grandma around." At first, it seemed like the perfect solution. Their sprawling 5-bedroom home in the wealthiest neighborhood of Springfield had a beautiful garden suite they called Grandma's Wing. Amanda had shown me around with such enthusiasm, pointing out the walk-in closets and the bathroom with support rails that they had installed especially for me. "You'll be so comfortable here, Ava," she had said with that bright smile that never quite reached her eyes. The first few months were pleasant enough. I helped with my grandchildren, 8-year-old Lily and 6-year-old Jack. I cooked occasionally and kept my spaces tidy, but slowly, almost imperceptibly, things began to change. Amanda started leaving notes about house rules. First, it was small things. My laundry should only be done on Tuesdays. I should text before using the main kitchen. Then came the comments about my cooking. "The children need to watch their sugar intake, Eva. Those cookies you bake are really not appropriate." By the 1-year mark, I had become the unpaid housekeeper and on-call babysitter. Amanda's social calendar grew increasingly full, and my occasional help with the children became a full-time job. My suite began to feel like a place I was permitted to sleep rather than my home. The breaking point came yesterday. I had been dusting in the formal living room when I accidentally knocked over an ornate vase. Amanda came running at the sound. "That was a $10,000 Ming Dynasty piece," she shrieked, though I later learned it was actually a reproduction. "This is exactly why we can't have nice things with you around. You're so careless." "I am sorry, Amanda. It was an accident," I said, my hands trembling as I tried to gather the pieces. "Leave it," she snapped. "You will just make it worse." I stood up slowly, my knees aching. "I will replace it." She laughed then, a cold sound. "With what money? You barely have enough to buy your prescriptions." Her eyes narrowed. "Face it, Eva. You need us far more than we need you." I said nothing, just turned to go back to my suite. "Running away? That is all you know how to do, is it not? You cannot even stand up for yourself." Her voice followed me down the hallway. "Go ahead. Get out of my house, I dare you. You would never survive a week without us." That night, I hardly slept. Amanda's words circled in my head like vultures. By morning, I had made up my mind. I waited until they left the house. Jason had a business meeting. Amanda had her tennis lesson followed by lunch with her friends. The children were at school. I packed methodically. Clothes, toiletries, my photo album, Richard's pocket watch, and the small jewelry box containing my mother's pearls and my grandmother's brooch. I left behind the furniture and decorative items that Jason had moved from my old house. I wrote a simple note and placed it on the kitchen table. "I have taken your dare. Please do not worry about me. I will be in touch when I am ready. Love, Mom." The Sunshine Extended Stay Motel was not exactly 5-star accommodation, but it was clean and, most importantly, within my limited budget. I paid for 2 weeks up front, the longest I could afford with the cash I had on hand. As I settled into the small room with its faded floral curtains and laminate furniture, my phone began to ring. Jason's name flashed on the screen. I silenced it. I wasn't ready to speak to him yet, not until I had figured out my next steps. After unpacking my few belongings, I sat on the edge of the bed and opened my banking app to assess my finances. What I saw made my blood run cold. My main savings account, which should have contained just over $40,000, showed a balance of just $3,622. I frantically checked my transaction history. Over the past 18 months, there had been multiple transfers to an account I didn't recognize. Small amounts at first, 500 here, 700 there, then larger sums in recent months. My hands shook as the realization hit me. Amanda had access to my accounts. After Richard died, Jason had suggested adding him as a joint holder to help manage things. It appeared that Amanda had somehow gained access through him. She had been systematically draining my savings for months. The room suddenly felt very small, and the weight of my situation crashed down on me. I was a 67-year-old widow with limited funds, no home, and apparently a daughter-in-law who had been stealing from me. For the first time since Richard died, I allowed myself to cry, truly cry, until there were no tears left. Morning came with harsh fluorescent light and the distant sound of traffic from the highway. I had barely slept, my mind racing with calculations and fears. The $3,000 would cover about a month at this motel. After that, I had no plan. My phone showed 12 missed calls from Jason and 3 voicemails. I wasn't ready to listen to them. Instead, I dressed carefully in slacks and a blouse, applied some lipstick, and went in search of coffee. The motel office was small, but spotlessly clean. Behind the counter stood a woman about my age, her silver hair cut in a practical bob, reading glasses perched on her nose as she worked on a computer. "Good morning," she said, looking up. "You must be in room 14. Checked in yesterday, right?" I nodded, surprised she remembered. "I'm Patty Reeves. I manage this place." She extended her hand, and her handshake was firm and warm. "Eva Miller," I replied. Patty gestured to a small coffee pot in the corner. "Help yourself. Just made it fresh." I poured myself a cup, grateful for the warmth between my hands. "Passing through or staying a while?" Patty asked conversationally. "I'm not sure yet," I answered truthfully. Something in my voice must have given me away because Patty's expression softened. "Honey, I've been running this place for 15 years. I know the face of someone who's landed here because they've got nowhere else to go." To my horror, tears sprang to my eyes. I tried to blink them back, embarrassed to be crying in front of a stranger. Patty came around the counter and guided me to a small table in the corner. "Sit," she instructed, then disappeared into a back room. She returned with 2 proper mugs and a plate of homemade cinnamon rolls. "The coffee in those paper cups tastes like cardboard. And everything looks better after sugar." Before I knew it, I was telling Patty everything. About Richard's death, moving in with Jason and Amanda, the slow erosion of my dignity, and finally, the discovery of the missing money. "And your son? He's okay with how she treats you?" Patty asked. Her direct blue eyes narrowed. "Jason works long hours. When he's home, Amanda is different, and I didn't want to cause problems in their marriage." Patty made a sound somewhere between a snort and a laugh. "Sounds like there are already problems in that marriage if she's treating his mother like that." My phone buzzed again. Jason's number. "You gonna answer that?" Patty asked. I shook my head. "Good for you." Patty refilled our coffee cups. "So what's your plan?" "I don't really have one beyond staying here until my money runs out." Patty studied me for a moment. "What did you do before? I mean, before you retired?" "I was an administrative assistant at an accounting firm for 20 years. Before the children were born, I worked as a bookkeeper." Something lit up in Patty's eyes. "I've been looking for someone to help with the books here. Nothing fancy, just a few hours a week. The pay's not much, but it would help stretch your dollars. And there's a vacant room at the back of my house, if you want to save on the motel costs." Pride made me hesitate. I couldn't impose. "It's not imposing if you're working for it," Patty said firmly. "And between you and me, I could use the company. My Harold's been gone 5 years now. I felt a flicker of hope for the first time in months. I would need to get my reading glasses from my suitcase. Patty grinned. That's the spirit. Later that afternoon, I was sitting at a small desk in Patty's office, familiarizing myself with her bookkeeping system. It was simple but effective, and I found myself enjoying the work, my brain reawakening to the satisfaction of balanced columns and orderly numbers. I was so engrossed that I didn't notice the man who entered the office until Patty called my name. Eva, there's someone here asking about you. I looked up, my heart racing with momentary fear that Jason had somehow found me. Instead, I saw an elegant older gentleman with silver hair and a well-tailored suit. He looked vaguely familiar, but I couldn't place him. Mrs. Miller? He inquired, his voice cultured and gentle. My name is William Stewart. I believe you know my daughter Amanda. My blood ran cold. How had Amanda's family found me so quickly? William must have seen my expression, because he quickly added, Please don't be alarmed. I'm not here on Amanda's behalf. Quite the opposite, in fact. Patty moved protectively closer to me. Maybe you should explain yourself, mister. William nodded. Of course. Mrs. Miller, I haven't spoken to my daughter in nearly 8 years. We are estranged. I learned from a mutual acquaintance that you had left my son-in-law's home rather abruptly. Given what I know about Amanda, I was concerned. I was too stunned to speak. Amanda had always talked about her wealthy family, about growing up with privilege. I don't understand, I finally managed. William sighed deeply. May I sit down? It's rather a long story. And that was how I found myself sitting across from Amanda's estranged father, hearing a truth that upended everything I thought I knew about my daughter-in-law. Amanda hasn't always been. Amanda Stewart, William began, his hands folded neatly on the table. She was born Amy Slater in a small town in Missouri. Her mother and I divorced when she was 12. I tried to maintain a relationship, but Amanda, or Amy, as she was then, became increasingly difficult as a teenager. I listened, stunned, as William detailed a childhood far different from the privileged upbringing Amanda had described to us. She was always ashamed of our middle-class lifestyle, William continued. Always wanted more, was convinced she deserved more. After high school, she changed her name to Amanda, moved to the city, and recreated herself. She told people she came from money, created an entire fictional background. But the country club memberships, the designer clothes, the vacations in Europe, I said, confused. William shook his head. All paid for with your son's money, I would guess. Amanda doesn't have family money. I'm a retired high school principal. Her mother was a nurse. As William spoke, pieces began falling into place. The way Amanda had always discouraged visits from her busy family. Her vague answers when Jason asked about her childhood. Her resistance to taking the children to her hometown. She cut me out completely when I remarried 5 years after her mother died, William explained. My new wife wasn't sophisticated enough for Amanda's new image. The last time I saw her was at my wife Carol's 60th birthday party. Amanda created a scene, claiming Carol had insulted her, which was entirely untrue. She stormed out, and I haven't heard from her since. How did you find me? I asked. Springfield is a small city. I still have friends there, including Martha Collins, who works at the country club. She overheard Amanda telling someone that her interfering mother-in-law had finally left. I was concerned, so I made some inquiries. A friend who works for the Springfield Times remembered seeing an Eva Miller checking into this motel yesterday. I was having trouble reconciling this information with the Amanda I knew. What about the family fortune? I asked. Their house, the cars, the vacation home in Aspen? William looked genuinely puzzled. As far as I know, your son's business is quite successful. Didn't your husband start that company? Another piece clicked into place. Richard had founded Miller Technologies 30 years ago, building it from nothing into a respected regional firm. Jason had taken over as CEO 5 years before Richard's death. The wealth came from my husband's company, I said slowly. Jason inherited it all. William nodded sympathetically. Amanda has always been drawn to money and status. I'm afraid your son's position would have been very attractive to her. But why would she lie about her background? Patty interjected. Control, William said simply. If everyone believes she comes from wealth and influence, it gives her power. The truth would make her vulnerable. It was almost too much to process. For 2 years, I had felt inadequate next to Amanda's supposed family pedigree, had been made to feel like an unsophisticated burden in their sophisticated lives. William pulled out his phone. There's something else you should see. He pulled up a social media profile and handed me the phone. It showed recent photos of Amanda at what appeared to be a romantic dinner with a man I recognized as Thomas Bradford, Jason's business partner. These were posted last week, William said gently. One of Martha's daughters follows Amanda online. Martha thought I should know, and now I think you should too. I stared at the images, at the intimate way Amanda was leaning toward Thomas, their hands entwined on the table. The caption read, "Business Dinner with the Brilliant Thomas Bradford." But the look in her eyes told a different story. She's having an affair, I whispered. It appears so, William confirmed. My mind raced. The late nights Amanda claimed were charity events. The business trips that coincided with Thomas's travel schedule. The private jokes between them at company functions. I need to tell Jason, I said, reaching for my phone. William placed a gentle hand on mine. Mrs. Miller, Eva, if I may. My daughter is a skilled manipulator. If Jason confronts her now, she'll deny everything and find a way to turn this around. We need more evidence before approaching your son. Patty, who had been quietly taking it all in, nodded in agreement. He's right, Eva. People like Amanda, they're experts at twisting the truth. You need to be strategic here. I knew they were right. Jason adored Amanda, or at least the version of her that she presented to him. He wouldn't believe these accusations without solid proof. What do you suggest? I asked. William exchanged glances with Patty. I think we need to understand exactly what's at stake here. Your finances, for one thing, and possibly your son's business as well. For the first time since walking out of Jason's house, I felt a glimmer of purpose replacing my fear. Amanda had lied, manipulated, and stolen from me, and now she was betraying my son as well. Where do we start? I asked, straightening my shoulders. Patty smiled. That's the spirit, honey. Nobody messes with our families and gets away with it. And in that moment, in a small motel office with 2 virtual strangers, I found an unexpected alliance and the first stirrings of a plan. The next morning, I called Margaret Sullivan, my closest friend from the neighborhood where Richard and I had lived for decades. Margaret had retired from her accounting firm 5 years ago, but kept her license active by doing occasional consulting work. Eva Miller, where on earth have you been? Margaret exclaimed when she answered. I've been trying to reach you for days. It felt good to hear a familiar voice, someone who knew me before I became Jason's mother or the children's grandmother. It's complicated, Margaret, I said. I need your help, and I need your discretion. We arranged to meet for lunch at a small cafe halfway between the motel and her home. When I arrived, Margaret was already there, her familiar figure comforting in its sturdiness. She had always been my rock during difficult times, from the PTA battles when our children were young to the dark days after Richard's diagnosis. You look terrible, she said bluntly as I sat down. Thank you for your honesty, I replied with a small smile. Tell me everything, she demanded. And so I did, starting with the gradual decline of my position in Jason's home, and ending with William's revelations about Amanda's background and the evidence of her affair with Thomas. Margaret listened without interrupting, her accountant's mind visibly processing the financial implications as I spoke. I need to know exactly what she's taken from me, I concluded. And I need to protect Jason and the company. Margaret's eyes narrowed. Let's start with your accounts. I'll need access to your online banking, statements for the past 2 years, and any financial documents you have. For the next week, Margaret and I met daily, piecing together the extent of Amanda's financial manipulation. William joined us when he could, providing additional context about Amanda's past behaviors. The picture that emerged was deeply troubling. Beyond the direct transfers from my account, Amanda had used my personal information to open a credit card in my name. She had been systematically taking small amounts from the children's college fund that Jason had established. Most alarming of all, we found evidence that she had been gathering information about Miller Technologies' patents and proprietary processes. "This goes beyond simple theft," Margaret said grimly, pointing to a series of emails Amanda had somehow forwarded from Jason's account to a private email address. "She's collecting ammunition." "For what?" I asked, though I feared I knew the answer. "Divorce," William said quietly. "She's preparing to leave Jason and take as much as she can with her." The revelation hit me like a physical blow, not just because of what it would do to Jason financially, but because of the emotional devastation it would cause him and my grandchildren. I tried calling Jason again that evening, but Amanda answered his phone. "Eva," she said, her voice honey-sweet with an undertone of venom. "How nice of you to finally call. Jason has been beside himself with worry." "I'd like to speak with my son, please," I said, keeping my voice steady. "He's not available right now. Perhaps if you hadn't run off like a dramatic teenager, you could talk to him in person." I bit back a sharp reply. "Please tell him I called." "Of course," Amanda replied, though we both knew she wouldn't. "And Amanda?" I added. "How's Thomas these days?" There was a moment of startled silence before she recovered. "I don't know what you're talking about, but let me be clear, Eva. If you're spreading rumors or trying to cause trouble in my marriage, you will never see your grandchildren again." The line went dead before I could respond. The threat against my relationship with Lily and Jack sparked a wave of anger unlike anything I'd felt before. How dare she use my grandchildren as pawns in her game? Later that evening, as I was reviewing financial documents with Margaret in my motel room, a sharp pain shot through my chest. I gasped, clutching at the fabric of my blouse. "Eva?" Margaret was instantly at my side. The pain intensified, radiating down my left arm. My vision blurred at the edges. "Call an ambulance," I managed to say, before everything went dark. I woke in the hospital to the steady beep of monitoring equipment and the concerned faces of Patty, William, and Margaret. "Heart attack?" I asked weakly. The doctor, a kind-faced woman in her 40s, shook her head. "Severe anxiety attack that mimicked heart attack symptoms. Your heart is actually in good shape for a woman your age, but your blood pressure was dangerously high." After the doctor left, Patty took my hand. "You scared us half to death, Eva." "We're going to need to pace ourselves," Margaret said firmly. "This isn't a sprint, it's a marathon." William nodded in agreement. "Amanda has spent years constructing her web. We need to be methodical in how we dismantle it." Looking at their concerned faces, I felt a surge of gratitude. In just a week, I had built a stronger support network than I'd had in 2 years living under Amanda's roof. "Thank you," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "All of you." The health scare had another unexpected effect. It prompted me to finally go through the boxes of Richard's papers that I had placed in storage when I moved in with Jason. William drove me there the day after I was released from the hospital. As I sorted through the dusty files and folders, a particular document caught my attention. It was the original ownership transfer agreement for Miller Technologies. I read it once, then again, my heart racing for an entirely different reason now. "William," I called, my voice unsteady. "I think you need to see this." He came over, taking the document carefully. "According to this," I explained, pointing to the relevant clause, "Richard never fully transferred ownership to Jason. He kept 51% of the voting shares in a trust, with me as the trustee. I'm still the majority owner of Miller Technologies." William looked from the document to me, his expression shifting from shock to a slow smile. "Eva," he said, "I believe we just found your trump card." The next day, Jason finally called from a number I didn't recognize. "Mom?" His voice was a mixture of relief and frustration. "Where are you? Why did you leave like that?" I took a deep breath. "Jason, we need to talk. In person, without Amanda." There was a pause. "She's really upset, Mom. She says you left without any explanation, that you've been acting strange for weeks. Of course she would spin it that way. Jason, please. Just meet me. 1 hour of your time. He agreed, reluctantly, to meet me at a small restaurant downtown the following day. I arrived early, selecting a quiet booth in the back. I had dressed carefully in the clothes Patty had helped me shop for, a simple but elegant outfit that made me look professional and pulled together, rather than like a runaway grandmother, as Patty put it. Jason looked tired when he arrived, the strain of the past week evident in the new lines around his eyes. "Mom," he said, giving me a brief, awkward hug before sitting down. "Thank you for coming," I said, suddenly unsure where to begin despite all my preparation. "Why did you leave like that?" he asked. "Do you have any idea how worried we've been? The kids keep asking where Grandma is." The mention of my grandchildren nearly broke my composure. I missed them too. But Jason, I couldn't stay in that house anymore. The way Amanda treats me. Jason's face hardened slightly. "Amanda has been nothing but generous, offering you a place in our home when you had nowhere else to go." I stared at him, hurt by his characterization. "Is that what she's told you? That I had nowhere to go? Jason, I owned a home. I had savings. I moved in because you insisted it would be better for everyone. And now you've run off to what? Prove some point?" He shook his head. "Mom, whatever issues you're having with Amanda, we can work them out. Come home." I realized then how deeply Amanda had manipulated his perception. "Jason, there's something you need to know. About Amanda. About our finances." I began to lay out what Margaret and I had discovered, starting with the money missing from my accounts. Jason's expression shifted from skepticism to discomfort. "There must be some misunderstanding. Amanda helps manage our household accounts, but she wouldn't take money from you. I have bank records, Jason. Over $30,000 transferred from my account to one I don't recognize." He frowned. "Maybe you forgot about some expenses, Mom. You've been under a lot of stress since Dad died." I was about to respond when a familiar voice cut through the restaurant. "There you are." Amanda stood at our table, immaculately dressed in a designer suit, her face a perfect mask of concern. "I've been so worried," she said, sliding into the booth next to Jason. "When you didn't come back to the office, I thought I should check on you." The calculated interruption was classic Amanda. She had likely been watching the restaurant, waiting for the right moment to intervene. "Amanda," I acknowledged coolly. Jason and I were having a private conversation. "We're family, Eva," she said, her tone suggesting I was being unreasonable. "We shouldn't have secrets." Jason looked relieved at her arrival, which told me everything about how effectively she had positioned herself as the rational one in our relationship. "Actually," I pressed on, "I was just telling Jason about the money missing from my accounts. The money you transferred out over the past 2 years. Amanda's expression didn't flicker. "Jason, I told you your mother's been confused lately. These accusations are exactly what I was worried about." "I have the bank statements," I said firmly, pulling the folder from my bag. Amanda's hand shot out, knocking my glass of water across the table. The liquid spread quickly across the documents. "Oh my goodness," she exclaimed with obviously fake concern. "I am so clumsy. Let me help with that." As she dabbed at the sodden papers with napkins, effectively destroying the evidence I had brought, she leaned closer to me. "You're making a big mistake," she whispered, her smile never faltering. "Do you really want to risk never seeing Lily and Jack again?" It was the same threat she had made on the phone, but hearing it in person, seeing the cold calculation in her eyes, made it far more chilling. Jason, oblivious to the exchange, was apologizing to the waiter who had come to clean up the spill. When the commotion settled, Amanda turned to Jason with a practiced look of compassion. "Honey, I think your mom needs help. This paranoia, these accusations, running away from home. It's not healthy." "I am not paranoid," I stated firmly. "Of course you don't think so," Amanda said soothingly, as if speaking to a child. "That's part of the problem." Jason looked torn, his eyes moving between us. "Mom, maybe Amanda's right. Maybe you should talk to someone. Dr. Reynolds has been helping Amanda's aunt through some similar issues. The implication that I was senile or mentally unstable infuriated me. I don't need a doctor, Jason. I need you to listen to me. Amanda is not who you think she is. And here come the baseless accusations again, Amanda sighed dramatically. Jason, this is exactly what happened with my grandmother before she needed full-time care. I realized with growing horror that she was setting the stage to have me declared incompetent, to take control of whatever assets I had left. Jason, I said desperately, your father never fully transferred ownership of the company to you. I still control 51% of the voting shares. Check the documents in the blue file in your home office if you don't believe me. Jason's expression changed to one of genuine concern. Mom, Dad transferred ownership to me 5 years before he died. We all signed the papers together, remember? Not full ownership, I insisted. He kept majority control and a trust with me as trustee. He wanted to make sure the company would always stay in the family. Amanda's smile tightened, almost imperceptibly. This was information she hadn't known. Your mother is confused, Jason, she said, her voice harder now. Perhaps it's time to consider more supervised living arrangements. I am not confused, I said, struggling to keep my voice level. And I'm not going anywhere with you. Amanda leaned forward, dropping all pretense of kindness. Listen to me carefully, Eva. If you continue with these ridiculous claims, if you try to interfere in our lives or our business, I will make absolutely certain you never see your grandchildren again. Is that really what you want? Jason looked shocked at her tone. Amanda, that's not necessary. She turned to him, instantly softening. I'm sorry, honey. I'm just worried about the children. This kind of instability isn't good for them. I stood up, gathering my wet papers and my dignity. Jason, when you're ready to hear the truth, you know how to reach me. As I walked out of the restaurant, I heard Amanda's voice behind me, already spinning the encounter her way. Poor thing. We really need to get her some help. I made it to William's car, parked a block away, before the tears came. That bad? He asked gently, as I slid into the passenger seat. Worse, I admitted. She's convinced him I'm having some kind of breakdown, and she threatened to keep me from the children if I don't back off. William's jaw tightened. That sounds like Amanda. She destroyed the financial evidence I brought, and Jason didn't believe me about the company shares. William started the car, his expression determined. Then we'll need to find evidence that even Jason can't ignore. Back at the motel, I felt defeated. The confrontation had gone exactly as Amanda would have wanted. She had controlled the narrative, cast me as unstable, and further cemented her position with Jason. Patty found me sitting on the edge of my bed, staring at nothing. That woman's a piece of work, she said after I recounted the disastrous meeting. She's winning, I admitted. Jason believes her, not me. Patty sat beside me. For now, maybe. But we're just getting started. Her confidence bolstered my flagging spirits. You're right. This isn't over. Not by a long shot, she agreed. Now, get some rest. Tomorrow, we're going to need that sharp mind of yours working at full capacity. As I prepared for bed that night, I realized something fundamental had changed. Despite the setback, despite Amanda's threats, I was no longer afraid. I was angry, and for the first time in years, I felt truly determined. Amanda had underestimated me, dismissed me as a weak old woman who could be bullied and controlled. She was about to learn how wrong she was. The next morning, I met with Margaret and William to regroup. We had established that I legally controlled Miller Technologies through the trust Richard had set up, but proving it would be another matter entirely, especially with Jason unconvinced. We need to approach this from a different angle, Margaret suggested. If Jason won't listen to you directly, maybe the board of directors will. Miller Technologies had a 7-member board, Jason as CEO, Thomas Bradford, and 5 outside directors who had been Richard's colleagues and friends. Do you know any of them personally? William asked. All of them, I confirmed. They used to come to our home for dinner regularly when Richard was alive. In fact, Susan Whitmore was one of my closest friends before she moved to Chicago to expand her consulting business. Margaret's eyes lit up. That's our opening. Contact Susan, arrange a meeting with the board without Jason's knowledge. As the trustee of the majority shareholding, you have that right. I hesitated. Won't that seem like I'm going behind Jason's back? Eva, William said gently. Amanda is actively working to undermine both you and Jason. Sometimes you have to take uncomfortable steps to protect the people you love. I knew he was right. That afternoon, I called Susan Whitmore. After explaining that I needed to discuss urgent company business confidentially, she agreed to convene an emergency board meeting in 2 days' time. With that in motion, we turned to our next challenge, gathering irrefutable evidence of Amanda's manipulation and deception. Margaret had been meticulously documenting the financial trails from my accounts, rebuilding the evidence Amanda had destroyed at the restaurant. William had compiled a detailed history of Amanda's past, including photographs and documents from her life as Amy Slater. But the missing piece was evidence of her affair with Thomas and any plans they might have for the company. We need access to her communications, Margaret stated plainly. I can't hack her email, I protested. No, William agreed. But there might be another way. He explained that Amanda had always been careless about digital security, reusing the same passwords across multiple accounts. If her patterns hadn't changed, we might be able to access her cloud storage, where she likely kept backup copies of important information. It felt wrong, invasive. But then, I remembered her threats regarding my grandchildren, the missing money, and the way she had systematically undermined my relationship with Jason. With William's guidance, we were able to access Amanda's cloud drive using a password recovery method tied to personal information he knew from her childhood. What we found was more damning than we could have imagined. Folders of financial documents from Miller Technologies that she had no legitimate reason to possess. Emails between her and Thomas discussing their relationship and plans for the future. A draft divorce filing that outlined her strategy to claim half of Jason's assets, including his stake in the company. Most disturbing were notes detailing how she had been systematically poisoning Jason's relationships with key board members through subtle misinformation and manufactured conflicts. We spent the entire next day preparing for the board meeting, organizing the evidence into a clear, compelling presentation. Barbara Reynolds, a tough corporate attorney recommended by Margaret, reviewed everything and helped us build an airtight case. The morning of the board meeting, I dressed in a suit I had purchased specifically for the occasion. As Patty helped me with a simple pearl necklace, she squeezed my shoulders reassuringly. You've got this, Eva. Show them what you're made of. The Miller Technologies headquarters looked exactly as it had when Richard was alive. The same etched glass doors, the same tasteful artwork in the lobby. The security guard recognized me immediately. Mrs. Miller, it's wonderful to see you again. Thank you, George, I replied, touched that he remembered me. Susan Whitmore was waiting in the conference room, along with the other 4 non-executive board members. After warm greetings and expressions of concern about my absence from recent company events, we got down to business. Thank you all for meeting on such short notice, I began. What I'm about to share with you is both difficult and urgent. Over the next hour, I presented the evidence we had compiled, starting with the trust documents establishing my position as majority shareholder and moving methodically through Amanda's financial manipulations, her true background, her affair with Thomas, and finally, her plans to gain control of key company assets. The board members' expressions ranged from shock to anger as the full picture emerged. This is extremely serious, Ava, Susan said when I had finished. If even half of this is accurate, the company is at significant risk. Every piece of evidence has been verified, I assured her. What do you propose we do? Asked Robert Chen, the longest-serving board member and one of Richard's oldest friends. First, we need to secure the company's intellectual property and financial accounts, I said, following the plan Barbara had helped develop. Then we need to remove Thomas Bradford from the board and any operational role, pending a full investigation. And Jason? Susan asked gently. He's been kept in the dark about all of this. My son has been deliberately manipulated, I said, my voice catching slightly. Amanda has been very effective at controlling what information reaches him and how it's framed. The board was discussing next steps when the conference room door swung open. Jason stood there, his face a mask of confusion and betrayal. Mom? What is this? Why wasn't I informed about this meeting? Before I could respond, Amanda appeared behind him, her expression thunderous when she saw me. What is she doing here? Amanda demanded. Jason, I told you she's been making wild accusations. She's not well. Susan Whitmore stood up. Actually, Mrs. Miller, we invited Eva here in her capacity as trustee of the controlling interest in Miller Technologies. A fact that, according to these documents, you were aware of when you attempted to access company files without authorization. Jason looked between Susan and me, clearly struggling to process this information. What controlling interest? Dad transferred ownership to me years ago. Not full ownership, son, I said gently. He kept 51% in trust, with me as the trustee. It's all there in the original documents. This is ridiculous, Amanda scoffed. Jason's been running this company successfully for years. You can't just walk in and take control because you're having some kind of senior moment. The dismissive, condescending tone was exactly what the board needed to hear. The contrast between her behavior and my measured presentation was stark. Mrs. Miller, Robert Chen said firmly, I think you should take a seat and listen rather than speak at this point. Jason was still standing near the doorway, looking lost. Mom, what's going on? Your mother has brought some very serious concerns to our attention, Susan explained, including evidence that your wife has been accessing confidential company information and sharing it with Thomas Bradford, with whom she appears to be having an inappropriate relationship. That's a lie, Amanda spat, but her composure was cracking. We have the emails, Amanda, I said quietly. We have everything. Jason turned to Amanda, searching her face. Is it true? About Thomas? Of course not, she insisted, but her eyes darted to the documents spread across the conference table. And the trust? Jason pressed. Did you know about that? Amanda's hesitation was answer enough. At that moment, William stepped into the room. He had been waiting outside as we had agreed, ready to provide additional testimony if needed. Amanda froze at the sight of him. Dad, what are you doing here? The shock of seeing her father clearly threw her off balance. William approached the table calmly. Hello, Amanda. Or should I still call you Amy? The blood drained from Amanda's face as William addressed the board. My name is William Stewart, Amanda's father. I've provided Eva with a complete history of my daughter's background and pattern of behavior. I'm afraid what you're seeing today is consistent with how she has operated throughout her adult life. You have no right to be here, Amanda hissed, her carefully constructed facade crumbling completely. Actually, I invited him, I said. The board deserved to hear from someone who knows you even better than I do. Jason looked utterly devastated, the truth finally breaking through the wall of lies Amanda had built around him. The Children's College Fund? He asked quietly. Was that you too? Amanda's silence was damning. I think we've heard enough, Susan declared, nodding to security who had been waiting discreetly by the door. Mrs. Miller, please step outside with these gentlemen while we conclude our discussion. You can't do this to me, Amanda snarled as the security officers approached. Jason, are you going to let them treat me this way? After everything I've done for you, for this company? But Jason had moved to sit at the table, his head in his hands, unable to even look at her. As Amanda was escorted out, William turned to follow. I'm sorry, he said simply to the room. I should have done more, sooner. When they had gone, I went to my son and placed a hand on his shoulder. I'm sorry too, Jason. I never wanted to hurt you. He looked up, his eyes red. All this time, she's been lying to me, manipulating me, turning me against my own mother. She's very good at what she does, I said softly. The board meeting continued for another hour as we outlined immediate steps to protect the company. Jason, though clearly shaken, participated fully once he had reviewed the evidence himself. By the end, Thomas Bradford had been removed from the board and placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Security protocols had been updated to restrict access to sensitive information. And most importantly, Jason and I were united again, ready to face whatever came next together. As we left the building that afternoon, Jason turned to me. "What happens now, Mom?" "Now," I said, "we start rebuilding. The company, our relationship, your life, everything." For the first time, in what felt like forever, my son hugged me properly, the way he used to before Amanda came between us. And in that moment, I knew that no matter how difficult the road ahead might be, we were going to be okay. In the weeks that followed the board meeting, life changed dramatically for all of us. The company launched a full forensic audit, revealing the extent of Amanda's interference. Thomas Bradford was terminated when the investigation confirmed he had been complicit in her schemes. Amanda herself faced multiple legal consequences. The evidence of financial fraud was overwhelming, particularly her theft from my accounts and the children's college fund. She agreed to a quiet divorce settlement that was far less generous than what she had planned to demand, motivated largely by her desire to avoid public exposure of her true background. Jason, despite his heartbreak, showed remarkable resilience. He had always been Richard's son in that way, able to absorb a blow and come back stronger. He threw himself into rebuilding the parts of the business that had suffered under Amanda's influence, and into being a present, engaged father to Lily and Jack. The children had been told simply that their mother had made some poor choices, and needed to live separately for a while. At ages 8 and 6, they didn't need the burden of the full truth. In time, they would understand more, but for now, establishing a stable routine was paramount. As for me, I faced a decision about where to live. Jason immediately invited me back to the house, but we both recognized that wasn't the right solution long term. "You need your own space, Mom," he said one evening as we sat in his kitchen, sharing coffee after the children had gone to bed. "Somewhere that's truly yours." I nodded, thinking of the independence I had rediscovered during my time at the motel. "I've been looking at some small houses near your neighborhood. I want to be close enough to see the children regularly, but have my own home again." Jason smiled. "I think that's perfect. And I'm sure Lily and Jack would love to help you decorate." With my finances restored through legal action against Amanda and access to the trust income from the company, I found a charming 2-bedroom cottage just 10 minutes from Jason's home. It needed some updating, but its cozy rooms and sunny garden reminded me of the first home Richard and I had purchased as newlyweds. Patty came with me to look at it before I made the offer. "This place has good bones," she declared, running a hand along the solid wood mantelpiece. "And good energy, too." I signed the papers the following week, feeling a profound sense of rightness as I did so. This was a home that was truly mine, not a suite in someone else's house, not a temporary room in a motel. Mine. The most unexpected development in those first few months was my continued friendship with Patty and William. Patty had become something of a business partner as well as a friend. My work organizing the motel's books had expanded into helping her develop a business plan for renovations and expansion. I found I enjoyed the work, the way it kept my mind sharp, and gave me a sense of purpose beyond being a mother and grandmother. William had remained in Springfield after the confrontation with Amanda, renting an apartment downtown while he tried to rebuild some kind of relationship with his daughter. Those efforts had been largely rebuffed, but in the process, he had become a regular visitor at my new home. "I brought that book we were discussing," he said one Sunday afternoon, handing me a well-worn copy of a novel as he stepped into my living room. "And I made that apple cake you mentioned liking last time," I replied, leading him to the kitchen where the warm scent of cinnamon filled the air. There was an ease between us, a comfortable companionship that had grown naturally from our shared experience. Neither of us was looking to replace the spouses we had lost, but we had found in each other a friendship that brought unexpected joy to our lives. 3 months after moving into my cottage, I hosted the first of what would become a tradition of Sunday family dinners. Jason and the children arrived first, bearing flowers and a hand-drawn card from Lily. Margaret came next, followed by Patty, and finally, William. Seeing them all gathered in my small dining room, passing dishes and sharing stories. I felt a profound sense of gratitude. These were the people who had stood by me when I most needed support, who had helped me find strength I didn't know I possessed. Later that evening, after the others had left, William helped me wash the last of the dishes. "You seem happy, Eva," he observed, handing me a plate to dry. "I am," I realized, somewhat surprised by the truth of it. Not in the way I expected to be at this point in my life, but happy nonetheless. "Life rarely follows the path we expect," William said thoughtfully. "Sometimes the detours turn out to be the most interesting part of the journey." I smiled at that. My detour involved being kicked out of my son's house, discovering my daughter-in-law was a con artist, and temporarily living in a motel. That's quite a scenic route. William laughed, the sound warm and genuine. "And yet, look where it led you." I looked around my kitchen, at the home I had created, thought of the relationships I had built and rebuilt, the independence I had reclaimed. "Yes," I agreed. "Look where it led me." Jason continued to run Miller Technologies, with occasional guidance from me in my role as trustee. Under our joint stewardship, the company flourished, expanding into new markets, while staying true to the values Richard had established. We added a charitable foundation in his name, focused on education for underprivileged children, something he had always supported privately. Lily and Jack spent every Wednesday afternoon and alternate weekends with me, filling my cottage with laughter and childish chaos that I treasured. I taught Lily to bake using my mother's recipes and helped Jack build model airplanes in the small workshop I'd set up in the garage. These quiet, ordinary moments of grandparenting were all the more precious for having nearly lost them. Amanda eventually moved across the country, where she undoubtedly created a new identity and story for herself. Jason received occasional emails about the children, but she showed little interest in regular visitation. While I felt sad for Lily and Jack's sake, I couldn't honestly say I missed her presence in our lives. 6 months after moving into my cottage, I stood in my garden on a crisp autumn morning, coffee cup in hand, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. From this quiet moment of solitude, I could hear Patty's voice in my head. "That's the spirit, honey. Nobody messes with our families and gets away with it." It made me smile. The woman who had walked out of Jason's house that day, terrified and uncertain, would never have imagined standing here now, stronger and more fulfilled than she had been in years. Life will always throw unexpected challenges our way. People will underestimate us, try to diminish us, even try to control us. But I learned through this journey that we are never too old to stand up for ourselves, never too set in our ways to forge new paths, and never too alone to find new allies in unexpected places. My name is Eva Miller. I am 68 years old, and I am just getting started. Have you ever been underestimated because of your age? Or had to stand up to someone who tried to control your life? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if my journey resonated with you, please like this video, subscribe to the channel for more stories of resilience, and share with someone who might need to be reminded of their own strength today. Thank you for listening, and remember, it's never too late to reclaim your power and build the life you deserve.